The Illinois Commercial Men's Association presents that well-known Chicago columnist who knows everything and everybody, what's happening and what's going to happen. Here he is, in person, Nate Gross.
Good evening, friends. This is Nate Gross. We're proud to have with us tonight one of the truly great comedians of our time.
Oh, Nate, please.
A star of stage, radio, and screen who needs no introduction to Chicago.
I do, too.
A man who has made millions of people laugh all over the world and who needs no introduction.
You said that once.
And has brought sunshine and happiness into your homes every Sunday night.
And on weeknights when I'm a guest.
A man who needs no...
No what?
Mind your own business.
And here he is.
Thank heaven.
Jack Benny.
Hooray!
Where's the audience? Thank you. Hello again, this is Jack Benny talking. And Nate, although I appreciate your introduction, I want to tell you I heard your show last week when Phil Harris was your guest.
Yeah, Phil's a great guy.
Well, he might be a great guy, but he's got a lot of nerve being on your program without my permission. And I heard what he said, too. Said Jack Benny needs a rest this summer, but Philsy Harris is going to stay on the air. Did you pay him for that, Nate?
I certainly did.
That's funny. I didn't get my commission.
Commission? Jack, do you take commission from members of your cast?
Well, it's not exactly a commission, Nate. It's something I put away for the Health and Welfare Fund.
Yeah. Your health and welfare.
Nate, who is this guy?
That's Everett Clark, our announcer.
Oh, yes, I heard him last week, too. The kid with the Peter Lorre complex. Whose house is he going to haunt this week?
Yeah, I heard you the week before last with Fred Allen.
Oh, thank you.
Don't thank me. I always listen to Fred Allen. He's funny.
I hope you notice who got the big laugh that night.
Yes, one will get a laugh by dropping one's trousers.
I didn't drop them. I was de-pantsed.
Yeah, but who else would think of having LSMFT sewed on the back of his shorts?
I didn't have them sewn on. I bought them that way. LSMFT, long shorts made for traveling. Anyway, Everett, I wasn't talking to you.
Well, I'm talking to you.
Well, talk to the people in our radio audience first, wise guy.
Must be the commercial. I'll get it.
Everett's here with a message from R.A. Kavanaugh, Secretary of the Illinois Commercial Men's Association, concerning ICMA plan of balanced insurance and how it works for the average man.
Right now is a good time for all men to consider the matter of personal accident insurance protection. For, we may as well face it, even a minor accident can shut off your income or play havoc with your budget. The ICMA plan of balanced insurance provides broad accident coverage for the average man in average circumstances. It's balanced insurance because it furnishes the right amount and kind of coverage at a cost any man can set aside for good, sound protection. As a preferred risk, you get 24-hour-a-day coverage for approximately $12 a year. Nearly 100,000 men enjoy ICMA protection. The Illinois Commercial Men's Association has been furnishing sound personal accident insurance protection for over 54 years. During this period, over $36 million has been paid in benefits to members and their beneficiaries, and the ICMA has earned a splendid reputation for liberality and fair-mindedness in promptly settling its claims. For complete information about the ICMA plan of balanced insurance, write ICMA, care of WBBM. And now here's your genial reporter, Nate Gross, with news about people you know best.
Marge Reitlinger, wife of the Herald American City editor Harry Reitlinger, is at Grant Hospital where she was operated on. And retired Police Sergeant Mike Mullen underwent an operation at Mercy Hospital. Mullen was a policeman for 40 years, beginning at the time of the first Chicago World's Fair until just a few years ago. Hugh Blakely, the advertising manager, was presented with the Silver Award by the Treasury Department for his work in the various war bond sales. Among those who escaped from the burning LaSalle Hotel were Senator Lucas's law associates, Charles Thomas of Rockford and Donald Sanborn of Springfield. They stood out in one of the many balconies of the hotel until they could return to their rooms and make their way to a fire escape. And while we're talking about the disaster that brought sadness to our city, let us pay tribute to the Chicago Police Department, which did a great job that night. I refer specifically to Commissioner Prendergast, who was there himself, Chief Ray Crane of the Uniformed Police, Deputy Chief of Detectives John Warren, Captain Jerry Looney, and Police Inspector Ed Daly, who was the first on the scene. Because of their being on the job, there was an absence of confusion that follows in the wake of such disasters. These men, as well as Fire Commissioner Corrigan, should be commended by Mayor Kelly for the important roles they played that terrible night. Senator Roland Libonati of Chicago's West Side seems to have the inside track to be Majority Leader of the state Senate. Attorney Ira Schultz and his wife expect an August baby. Dr. Oscar Lang, the Polish ambassador and delegate to the United Nations Security Council, may resign to reapply for his American citizenship and go back to his teaching job at the University of Chicago. 4 of the singing girls in the musical up in Central Park are expectant mothers, and their husbands are insisting that they quit the show. Herman Weinberg of the Manhattan Pickle Company and Louise Goldman of Chestnut Street will be married next January. Father Marty Doherty, whose many brothers are represented as reporters on each of Chicago's newspapers, and who himself was a newspaperman until he quit to become a priest, is home to celebrate his 20th anniversary in the clergy and his mother's birthday, which was today. His own parish is in Oregon. Our friend, the Reverend Frederick Mannion, again is ill at Mercy Hospital, but I talked to him on the phone a few minutes ago, and he said he'd be well enough to leave for Boston, where he was born, next Wednesday. Ross DeLue, former local newspaper man, was promoted to lieutenant colonel in Newark, where he is stationed with the Air Force. Sam McKilley, the automobile dealer, will rebuild the Red Lion Inn near Elgin on Route 25. It burned down last week. Denny of Don the Beachcombers, who's otherwise known as Samuel Pruitt Denning, celebrated his 5th wedding anniversary today. Carl Brisson, the famous musical comedy and movie star, expects his daughter-in-law, Rosalind Russell, also a movie actress, to visit with him here while he is starring in the Mayfair Room. Brisson will be our guest next Sunday night, so be sure to listen in. Now let's take a peek at Newscope and see what it forecasts for the nation in the months to come. Let's see. Newscope says, look for the Army Signal Corps to announce plans to contact the sun by radar. Look for furniture production to reach an all-time high in 1946, but the supply will still be behind schedule. Look for colored television sets in 6 months if price relief is granted by the OPA. Look for inflation to grow despite OPA controls. Now here's Everett to tell you how to keep well informed on world matters with a minimum of reading time and effort.
The answer is Newscope, Nate. Every person who wants to be well informed in this day and age when so much is happening can do so by reading Newscope. Newscope makes it easy for you to keep abreast of changes in government, moves by private business, action planned by labor leaders. Newscope is edited for quick, easy reading. It brings you items of great news significance, plus sound, authoritative forecasts of events that may affect you in the future. And Newscope is as easy to get as it is to read. Just send a card with your name and address to ICMA, care of WBBM, for the current and future issues. Newscope is offered without cost or obligation as a public service by the Illinois Commercial Men's Association. Address a card now to ICMA, care of WBBM, and mail it in the morning on your way to work.
Thank you, Everett. Now back to our guest, Jack Benny.
It's about time.
Well, Jack, now that you're here, I'd like to ask you a few questions. You don't mind being interviewed, do you?
No, not at all.
You know, you were our guest on this program about a year and a half ago, remember?
Yes, I do, Nate, and this is sort of a return engagement. Fortunately, I've had other work in between. You know, with me, it's either feast or famine. I could have played my violin at 3 weddings tonight.
Say, that reminds me, Jack. I meant to ask you to bring your violin and forgot all about it.
What did you say, Nate?
I said I meant to ask you to bring your violin and forgot all about it.
Nate, you really mean you wanted me to play a violin solo on this program?
Jack, I've been listening to your program for years. I've heard people panning you and kidding about you and your violin. But I've heard you playing. Well, I think you're one of the greatest violin virtuosos in America today.
Oh, Nate, you're kidding.
I certainly am.
Now, look, Nate, I'm on my vacation. If you're going to start getting laughs, you know, brother. Now, look, Nate, I'm on my vacation. I didn't come up here on your program to be insulted. After all, you asked me to be your guest.
I did not. You asked me.
When?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
I didn't ask you on Thursday. I was in Waukegan. Don't be so smart. Anyway, Nate, I only stayed over here to be with you tonight. After all, I'm driving back home tomorrow morning.
No kidding, Jack. Are you going to drive all the way to the coast?
Yes, sir. I got my Maxwell all fixed up and raring to go.
Your Maxwell, huh?
Yep. You know, I gave it to the scrap drive 4 years ago, and they returned it last week.
Well, how long do you think it'll take you to make the trip?
In my Maxwell? Now, let's see. Well, I'll leave the Ambassador East Hotel about 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And if the wind is in the right direction, I ought to get to the Blackstone by tomorrow night. Of course, I'll stay there overnight, leave early Tuesday morning, and with everything going along all right, I ought to get to Aurora by Thursday or Friday.
Oh, well, then, if you plan it carefully, Jack, you ought to be back home in time for your opening broadcast in October.
Yes, and if not, I can always start my season a week or so later.
Well, tell me, Jack, is your Maxwell in good condition?
Pretty good, Nate. You see, I have 3 good tires and 1 soft rim, you see. And around this one rim, I have tennis shoes. So the car runs along pretty smoothly, although when I'm driving along late at night, I get an eerie feeling that someone is following me.
Well, Jack, if it's going to take you all summer to get back home, when are you going to make your new picture I've been reading about?
Oh, you mean The Life of Jack Benny?
Yes.
Well, we're going to start that about the 1st of November, and it's a wonderful idea, Nate. You see, it's the story of my life, of course, and it starts out from the time I was born in Waukegan up to my present age of 37, see? Now, this will take...
Wait a minute, Jack. Wait a minute. Now, wait a minute, please. I'm 39 years old, and I used to see your act at the State Lake Theater when I was a little boy.
Nate, you might have been young when you went to see me at the State Lake Theater, but you have never been little. I found out that your mother had to jack you up to put diapers on you. So don't give me that. Anyway, you're right, Nate. I've only been kidding about my age always. I mean, I wish I was 37. Oh, well, I can wait.
Say, Jack, getting back to this picture of yours, you haven't made any in a long time, have you?
No, I haven't, Nate. Not since the scene I did in Fred Allen's picture.
Fred Allen's picture? Wasn't that called In the Bag?
Yes, and they should have kept it there. You know, I didn't get paid for that picture, Nate. They talked me into it by telling me that it'd be made in Technicolor. And then when they started to shoot it, they found out they couldn't make it in Technicolor. They had to make it in black and white.
Why? What happened?
Well, due to a peculiar pigment in Fred Allen's skin, he photographs plaid. So there, I was stuck with
Say, Jack, I saw that picture, and I thought you were great in it. You made Allen look like an amateur.
You really think so?
No, but I've got to come in with a line once in a while to keep the program alive.
Say, Nate, this guy's your announcer, isn't he?
Yes.
Well, tell him the war is over and announcers are coming back in droves. And besides, Don Wilson isn't doing anything this summer, and you can have him cheap.
Not as cheap as I get Everett.
Why? What are you paying Everett?
Come here. I don't want to embarrass him. I'll whisper it to you.
You do? On a local program? Why, Don Wilson only gets... And he does my laundry on Wednesday.
You two guys are the cheapest bums that I've ever met in my life.
Oh, yeah? Well, you're just lucky we are bums, or you'd have the biggest libel suit on your hands you ever had in your life. Isn't that right, Nate?
You said it.
Yeah. Well, Nate, I got to run along now. It's a great pleasure being here. Had a good audience. So one of the reasons I always like to broadcast with you is, I don't know whether you know this or not, I'm an old newspaper man myself.
Yeah, I didn't know that, Jack.
Oh, yes. You see, before I was a concert violinist, I was a dramatic critic of the Waukegan News Sun. But, of course, we had no shows in Waukegan those days, so I was practically what Everett called me.
A bum.
Yes. So when they made me... So then they made me the night editor of the same paper. I was night editor for 3 years before I found out I was the night watchman. Well, I got to run along now.
So long, Jack. Thanks for coming over.
You're welcome. Oh, by the way, Nate, I got a wonderful gag before I leave. Now, listen, we got to do this. I'll say to you, what's the difference between Walter Winchell and Nate Gross? And then you say to me, I don't know, what is the difference between Walter Winchell and Nate Gross? Go ahead.
All right, Jack. What is the difference between Walter Winchell and Nate Gross?
Winchell is all flash, and Gross is all flesh. Oh, Benny, how can you go on a vacation when they need you so badly? You know, I ad-libbed that gag.
Ad-libbed? You did that same joke in this program 1.5 years ago.
I did?
Yes.
Well, my writers will certainly hear from me. So long, Nate.
Thank you, Jack Benny. When nicer guys are born, they'll use you for a pattern. You know, Everett, I just can't wait to see the Warner Brothers picture The Life of Jack Benny.
I can.
Shame on you, Everett. Good night, folks.
Just a reminder, the current issue of Newscope is still available. To receive it and all future issues, send a card with your name and address to ICMA, care of WBBM. Write it now, mail it in the morning, and don't forget your ICMA date next Sunday night with Carl Brisson. Your reporter, Nate Gross, presented to you by the Illinois Commercial Men's Association, returns to you next Sunday with stories about people you know best. Everett Clark speaking. This program has come to you from the WBBM Air Theater, Wrigley Building, Chicago.